Today, we're going after the Platinum Trophy for Sifu. I'd heard a lot of good things about this game, particularly about the combat, so I was pretty excited. The game has 43 trophies in total, not including the 2 Arenas DLC. For now, I'm just here for the Platinum, but if you guys want to see me get the DLC trophies as well, feel free to let me know and maybe I'll come back to it sometime later on. This game's trophies are split into 3 different categories. The ones relating to and beating the story, like Furious Fists, the combat trophies, like 36 Chamber of Kung Fu, and what are basically collectible trophies that deal with the detective board, like Knowledge Grade. To start off with, we begin the game in the prologue where we actually play as the bad guy, shocking I know, as we and our merry gang of murderers kill an old martial arts master and steal something. The game never really states what this thing is. Also, unfortunately, we get discovered, and here we pick our gender before we're killed by a guy using a machete. Gotta say, I was a bit surprised we just straight up got killed off at the start of the game, but that's pretty metal if you ask me. But we don't stay dead for long, as a magical set of talismans bring us back to life, thus starting our life of revenge. It's actually here the game shifts into a really cool tutorial section to teach you the fundamentals you'll use for the rest of the game. After that, it's here we're introduced to the detective board, which is basically just a way for us to keep track of collectibles found in every stage of the game. The game has 5 stages in total, and the whole gimmick of the game being that every time you lose all your health, instead of dying, your death counter goes up by 1, and then you age by that number. So say you have a death counter of 2 and you're 20 years old, if you lose all your health, then your age will go up to 22, and your death counter will go up to 3. The talismans you have will break every 10 years all the way up to 70. If you lose all your health while you're at 70 or higher, it's game over and you have to start the entire stage over again at whatever age you started it at. However, each stage starts you out at the age you were when you reached it. So say you beat the first stage at age 25, you start the second level. No matter what happens while you're playing that level, if you need to restart it, you can restart it at age 25. This information will be very important for a trophy I'm going to bring up later on. So, I think what I'm going to do now, as far as the structure of this video goes, is I'm just going to go over every single trophy I earn at each stage, regardless of when I got it. So, like the first stage, the squats, I'm going to go over every trophy I earned that stage, whether it was the first time I went through it or the 10th. This way I can knock out a bunch of trophies each stage, and I'll also be able to keep the story somewhat coherent as we progress. The only exception is I'm going to go back for just a brief second and talk about like the pacifist run later on. But in any case, with all that being said, let's get into it. Yeah, the prologue has its own trophy attached to it, so obviously this was the first one I popped before the game officially starts. The first stage of the game gives you is called the squats, which does make me giggle a little every time I say it because I am indeed 9 years old. With the main path to the boss being blocked off, we decided to take the scenic route. See the sights, take in the sounds, beat the shit out of the locals, you know, typical tourist things. The first trophy I earned on the stage was called Lightning Hands. During this pretty cool hallway section that kind of reminds me of that one hallway scene from the Daredevil Netflix show. After that, I ended up getting a little too big for my britches somewhere along the way and died the first time, resulting in me learning the first skill of the game and earning the next trophy, Life is Your Teacher, for unlocking a skill. After making my way through the stage, I eventually reached a spot on the stage called the Hangar, where I eventually managed to unlock the trophy called Rumble in the Hangar, where you have to beat everyone in that part in under a minute and 20 seconds once you're spotted. This wasn't too bad when I finally managed to unlock it, since I had already been through the whole game a couple of times at that point and had all the skills unlocked. But I could definitely see someone being able to get this trophy way earlier than I did if you really push for it. After the hangar, you have to confront the 3 Stooges, and then you can finally access the boss of the stage, the Botanist, or Fahar as you later find out he's called. After visiting a later stage in the game, I was also able to earn the Detective Story trophy for getting all the Detective Board collectibles in this level. After this, I earned 4 trophies in the boss fight: the Assault, State of Constant Learning, Old Child, and Kill Nil. State of Constant Learning was for permanently unlocking a skill, and Old Child was for reaching 70 years old or older. I was still pretty bad at the game at that point, but eventually I was able to brute force my way through it until I was finally able to use the extra damage you get when you're older to beat Fahar and earn the Assault trophy. I went back a few playthroughs later on when I got more experience at the game and completely annihilated him to earn the Kill Nil trophy for beating a boss without dying. The next stage in our journey is the club, and after slipping the bouncer a fistful of pain and suffering, we make our way inside. I was able to earn my first trophy on the stage by vaulting over the counter for the Stuntmaster trophy, which asks you to vault over things a certain number of times. I don't actually remember how many times you need for this, but it's not many, I promise. Unfortunately for the guy behind the counter and his buddies, I had places to be, so yeah, go to sleep, I guess. The big dance lounge area of the club is where I earned the Master, the Phoenix Eye Fist, and the Qui-Gon Essence trophies for having used all the various focus attacks in the game and getting the highest age-based reward from the Jade Dragon. After visiting a later level on in the game, you can come back here and interact with this one guy in a studio for a collectible you need for that stage, which earned me the Drunken Fighter trophy for getting all of the Detective Board collectibles for this stage. We make our way through the club, ending up in a fight pit, which pretty much is a typical Saturday night at Applebee's. It's here I earned the next trophy, the Pit Protector. You see that big guy in the jacket? Yeah, you gotta beat him before the other guys to get this trophy, which wasn't too bad because there's a bat you can get before dropping down in the pit, and weapons do a huge amount of damage in this game. Next, we proceed through the rest of the club until we reach a set of trials, which in this game amounts to go to this part and fight here, go here and fight these guys, and then go over there and play some chess. Nah, just kidding, it's fight some more. This next trophy I unlocked in the area is called Ferocity, Speed, Strength, Accuracy. I had been attempting this trophy for a couple of days before I finally managed to get it. See, this trophy asks you to get a score of 20,000 in any level, and I had seen the best stage to do this on was the club. For a couple of days I went after this trophy and I just couldn't get it. I think the highest score I ever got was 17 or 18k. However, something I forgot is that after you beat the game the first time, you get access to things called modifiers, which can give you things like infinite focus, make enemies stronger, weaker, etc. However, if you just use modifiers that give you a benefit, like infinite focus, then the game won't save your progress and thus you won't get any trophies. But if you use the ones that do give you a disadvantage, like stronger enemies, the game will save your progress. So, I did what I had to do. I made the enemies on this stage harder. Why, you may ask? Well, because the more hits an enemy can take, the more points you can earn by hitting them before they go down. So, I don't want to hear that I cheated. If anything, I made the stage harder on myself to be able to get this trophy. So, after the trials, you come face to face with Sean the Fighter. He was a cakewalk. Yeah, this guy is probably the easiest boss in the game. Almost all his attacks are highs, meaning if you hold the block button and flick the left analog stick down, you'll dodge almost all his attacks, except for one sweep he can pull out every now and again, which did trip me up, but it so rarely happened it wasn't ever an issue. So, after making quick work of Sean, I earned the Hateful Pole Fighter trophy and get ready for the next stage, the Museum. Up to this point, the stages hadn't been too difficult as far as regular enemy counters are concerned, but not anymore. This stage does ramp up the difficulty of the regular enemies quite a bit, and there's several parts of this stage that can absolutely kick your ass if you're not careful. I earned the first trophy, though, for the stage called Be Like Water, My Friend. All you gotta do is grab this guy and throw him over the railing into the fountain below. After going through another gauntlet of enemies, I earned a trophy I've been working on for some time, as with the 20k trophy from the previous stage, the 36th Chamber of Kung Fu. This trophy wants you to perform every takedown in the game, which are the cool cinematics you do to finish off enemies. Normally, you'd probably get this trophy naturally by just playing the game normally, but I'm a trophy hunter, baby, and when I see my sights on a trophy, I will get that trophy one way or another. So you can imagine my surprise when I was actually replaying this level for the Prodigal Child trophy that I'll explain later on. I managed to pop this one randomly for doing the running takedown. The next trophy I earned for this stage was the Path of the Prospect trophy for unlocking the Cowbit focus skill, and then shortly after that I earned the Martial Artist trophy for getting all the detective board collectibles after again visiting a later stage. Then the next trophy I earned was the I Know Kung Fu trophy for reaching a level score of 10k. And just as a quick reminder, this trophy chronologically pops before the 20k one, but like I said, I'm going over all of the trophies in each individual stage just to make the video a little more coherent. After a neat looking set of rooms, we make our way to the boss of this stage, Kuroki the Artist. And aside from the final boss in the game, she's a boss I never got fully comfortable fighting. The weapon she uses in the first phase of the fight is bladed, so even if you block it, if you don't have a weapon of your own, you'll still take chip damage. And it was also very hard for me to recognize the patterns in her attacks apart from one set of moves. This first phase is definitely a trial of patience, but the good news is that if you can make it through her first phase, her second one is way easier. She starts using kunai to attack you, and her attacks become way more predictable. And if you have the skill that lets you catch thrown objects, you can even catch the kunai she throws at you and throw them back at her for just a little bit of chip damage, which is actually how I earned the street fighting trophy. So, with the confidence of facing a much easier opponent this time around, I was able to deal with her, earning me the A Lady's Blood in the Snow trophy. And with the artist dealt with, we move on to the next stage, the tower. Our next stage starts off relatively tame. After a brief scuffle inside the elevator because he just couldn't resist hitting all the buttons, I actually confront the boss of this stage, Lady Wing Chun, the CEO, with her remarking how we don't even have any scars and how young we are. You should see me on the inside, lady. After that, she disappears and we break into her safe because of the item you get from the club. You are able to access her computer, earning me the Knowledge Greed trophy for getting all the detective boards for this stage. Apparently, her guards didn't care for us rummaging through her personal items too much and attack us, which actually led me into earning the next trophy, Sword Stained with Blood. To get this trophy, you have to use a power attack while you're holding a bladed weapon, and then you have to hit the enemy with it, which will instantly down them, but you'll lose the bladed weapon in the process. You do have to be a bit careful when you go for this, because sometimes enemies will dodge it, and then it leaves you kind of high and dry, but I am a true Kung Fu gamer, and thus it wasn't that hard for me. After a long series of fights in the tower, you actually end up eventually in an underground area for the remainder of the level. It's here I earned the next trophy because I was curious, take damage to save time. And I'll just let the footage explain this trophy for me. After this, I earned the next two trophies. Hey, it's me, your old pal, Editing Against the Chill here. I'm back at it again, boys, because as it turns out, as I was editing this video, I didn't realize that I actually only got one last trophy before I fought the CEO, which is Qui-Gon Mind. I actually unlocked Qui-Gon Breath in the next stage, the Sanctuary, so just ignore the breath comments. Ignore that for now. We'll get to that later in the video. And Qui-Gon Mind for taking the highest XP base reward. With the rewards claimed, we jump into the abyss to take on the boss. She was the boss I hated fighting the most because of how she keeps you ranged for a majority of the fight. Now, admittedly, her attacks are pretty easy to dodge, but I'm just impatient when it comes to boss fights sometimes, so this led me to rushing in and getting hit a lot more than you probably otherwise would. Regardless of all that, she's still probably the second easiest boss in the game, because even if you mess up and get hit a lot, or God forbid die a couple of times, she's pretty frail and doesn't take as much punishment. So, after ramming my head against this cardboard wall enough times, I earned the Lady Wing Chun trophy and prepare myself for the final stage, the Sanctuary. Well, here we are, the final stage of the game, the Sanctuary, where it's here you take on Yang, the leader and the one who killed your father. This is also the stage where you can get the key to the door in Fahar's room back in stage 1, by the way, if you're curious where you can get this key from. I was able to knock out several trophies here. To quickly go over each one, use the photo mode, throw enemies a certain number of times, complete the detective board, hit 3 enemies with a single strike, and throw an enemy over this railing. The hardest trophy out of all of these was easily Kung Fu Tussle, because you have to use the 360 swing for the polearm weapon to even have a chance at this. Then, the real kick in the balls is that the enemies in this game only gang up on you in groups of 2 at a time, so it takes quite a bit of manipulation to get enough enemies close to you. Then, on top of that, the hitbox for the 360 swing is pretty wonky at best. So, to be honest with you, I kind of just threw myself at these group of enemies for about an hour or so until I finally managed to pop the trophy. Then, after this, we faced the final boss of the game, Yang, and oh my god. Whatever you think of the other bosses in this game doesn't matter. This guy is on a completely different level. His attacks are quick and hard to read. He can hit you with various moves from your own moveset, and the final nail in the difficulty coffin, you can't use any focus attacks on him at all. Even with all the experience I've acquired throughout the numerous playthroughs of this game, he's the only other boss other than Kuroki that I was never fully comfortable fighting. But I persevered, and after losing quite a few lives in the process, I made it to his second phase, which is even harder because he has a few new combos, and he also throws in a sweep in those combos to trip you up from time to time. But eventually, I did manage to get through this final phase and earn myself the Furious Fist trophy. So, with the first playthrough out of the way, you then have to go back and play the game again, but this time, you have to spare the bosses by getting them to their second phase and breaking their structure bar twice. So, I went and did that, and you can only imagine how the fight with Yang went on this run, but I managed it regardless. Now, Gadies and Littlemen, it's time for the final playthrough of the game. There were 2 trophies left to acquire before I could call the Platinum Trophy my own. Scareless, and Prodigal Child. To obtain these 2 trophies meant I had to beat the whole game while being 25 years old or younger. So, to give myself the best possible chance, I went back and played the game all the way up to Sanctuary again, thankfully reaching it by the age of 21. After dealing with the goon squad outside Yang's boss arena, I enter and begin the fight. Going into this fight at 21 with no death counters means you can only lose to Yang 3 times at most, and that's only if you manage to get through his first phase without dying or dying only once. Needless to say, the pressure was definitely on. Despite my best efforts, I just couldn't get through Yang's first phase without dying at least once, but I was able to get to his second phase shortly after, and in this game, if you get to a boss's second phase, it not only refills your health bar, but it also drops your death counter by 1. So I was starting his second phase at 22 with nothing on my death counter, meaning I had exactly 2 deaths left before I'm forced to restart the level again. And keep in mind, this was my 9th or 10th time attempting this. Yang's attacks in the second phase are ferocious, and that damn sweep he incorporates into his combos always managed to catch me off guard, which actually led me to my first death on this phase, bumping me up to age 23. The fight continued on, my nerves eventually getting the better of me and costing me yet another death, now putting me at age 25. This was it. The final gauntlet before having to restart the stage for like the 10th or 11th time. Palms sweaty, knees weak, and arms heavy, I pressed on. We traded blows, his health getting very low, but mine getting down to where a single hit, one mistake, would cause a restart. But that was not my destiny. And with Yang's final death in our hands, I unlocked both Scareless and Prodigal Child, finally earning me the Platinum Trophy. Sifu is a damn good game, and it's one of those games that start off being pretty difficult to learn, but with a bit of perseverance, once the game clicks with you, it becomes an insanely fun fighting game that I enjoyed every minute of. The team over at Slow Clap deserve every bit of praise they got for this game, and I can only hope that it did well enough to warrant a sequel, because I'd love to see this game expanded upon, like maybe having multiple different skill trees based on martial art styles. In any case, I'd definitely give this game a 9 out of 10, there being a few nitpicks I have, like with the story. While not being bad, I was never truly invested in. I think it's pretty clear they made the game first and then wrote a story around it, or at least that's how it feels to me. But it never detracts from the experience, so I'm only ever going to call it a nitpick. Still, I highly recommend this game to anyone who hasn't played it yet, or if you have played it and just couldn't get through the learning curve, I highly encourage you to go back and give it another shot. Be like water, my friends, because water can wear away the hardest stone, not because of its strength, but because of its perseverance. I'll see y'all for the next one.